They thought no help would come. Story Part 1. The mining colony of New Haven sat like a tiny jewel against the black void of space, its metal structures gleaming under the pale light of a distant star. Home to 12,000 souls, it had been humanity's furthest outpost for nearly a decade. The colonists had carved out a life among the asteroid fields, extracting precious minerals that kept Earth's economy running. Captain Sarah Chen pressed her face against the observation deck's reinforced window, watching her daughter Emma play in the artificial gravity of the colony's central hub. At 8 years old, Emma had never seen Earth, never felt real sunlight or breathed unfiltered air. This cold metal world was all she knew, yet her laughter echoed through the corridors like music. The peace shattered when the alarms began screaming. Sarah's communicator crackled to life. All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Through the viewport, Sarah saw them emerging from the darkness between asteroids. Ships unlike anything in human design, their hulls black as space itself, covered in spikes and angular protrusions that seemed to drink in light. The Nexari had found them. The first attack came without warning. Beams of crimson energy lanced out from the alien vessels, striking the colony's outer defensive platforms. Metal vaporized in brilliant flashes, leaving twisted wreckage tumbling through space. The colony's shields flickered and failed within minutes. Sarah ran through corridors filled with panicking civilians, her security training taking over. She helped organize evacuations, sealing off damaged sections and directing people to the reinforced shelters deep in the colony's core. But she knew it was hopeless. New Haven had only basic defensive systems, designed to ward off pirates and asteroid impacts, not a full military assault. Commander Blake Morrison stood in the colony's command center, his weathered face grim as he watched the tactical display. 15 Nexari warships surrounded them, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything the colony could field. Their own defense fleet consisted of 3 aging patrol boats and a handful of mining vessels hastily fitted with weapons. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the lead Nexari vessel," reported Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. "Put it through," Morrison said, knowing what was coming. The holographic display shimmered, revealing the angular features of a Nexari commander. Its skin was pale gray, with black markings that pulsed with its heartbeat. When it spoke, its voice was like grinding metal. "Human colony, you have 30 of your time units to surrender. Submit to harvesting or be destroyed. Your choice." Morrison's jaw tightened. He knew what harvesting meant. The Nexari were slavers, taking entire populations to work in their deep space mining operations. Those who survived the brutal conditions were considered lucky. "This is Commander Morrison of New Haven Colony. We reject your terms. We are prepared to defend ourselves." The Nexari commander's lipless mouth curved in what might have been amusement. "Your weapons are primitive. Your ships are few. You cannot escape. You cannot hide. You will surrender, or you will die." The transmission cut out. Morrison turned to his staff. "Send out a distress signal on all frequencies. Emergency priority. Tell them we need immediate military assistance." "Sir," Torres said quietly, "the nearest Earth Defense Force patrol is 6 weeks away. Even if they left immediately—" Morrison nodded grimly. 6 weeks. They had perhaps 6 hours before the Nexari grew tired of waiting. But protocol demanded they try. The distress signal burst out across space, carrying New Haven's desperate plea to anyone who might be listening. It spoke of 12,000 civilians, of children who had never seen their homeworld, of families facing slavery or death. It begged for help from any ship, any fleet, any miracle that might be within range. Deep in the colony's shelters, families huddled together in the dim emergency lighting. Parents held their children close, whispering reassurances they didn't believe. Some prayed to gods they had carried with them from Earth. Others simply sat in silence, watching the ceiling as if they could see through it to the battle above. Sarah found Emma in Shelter 7, clutching a stuffed animal that had seen better days. Her daughter's eyes were wide with fear, but she tried to be brave. "Mommy, are the bad ships going to hurt us?" Emma asked in a small voice. Sarah knelt beside her daughter, struggling to find words. How do you explain to a child that monsters from the dark had come calling? How do you promise safety when you have none to give? "I don't know, sweetheart," Sarah said honestly. "But there are good people working very hard to keep us safe." Above them, the colony's defenders prepared for a hopeless fight. The 3 patrol boats took position between the Nexari fleet and the colony, their crews knowing they were flying to their deaths. The converted mining ships formed a second line, their improvised weapons charging for what would likely be their only shots. Captain Rodriguez piloted the patrol boat Defiant, the most powerful ship in New Haven's tiny fleet. Through his canopy, he could see the massive Nexari vessels moving into attack formation. Each one was 10 times the size of his ship, bristling with weapons that could turn his boat to vapor in seconds. "All ships, this is Rodriguez," he broadcast on the tactical frequency. "Remember what we're fighting for. Those are our families down there, our friends, our future. We may not win this fight, but we're going to make them remember they were here." The Nexari ships began their approach, moving with predatory grace through the asteroid field. Their weapons powered up, casting an ominous red glow across their hulls. The colony's automated defenses opened fire first, streams of plasma and kinetic rounds reaching out across space. Most were absorbed by Nexari shields or deflected by their armor. The first patrol boat died in a brilliant explosion as 3 energy beams converged on its position. The second lasted longer, ducking behind an asteroid and scoring several hits on a Nexari cruiser before return fire turned it into spreading debris. Captain Rodriguez found himself alone, facing 15 enemy ships with nothing but determination and a prayer. He aimed for the largest vessel, pushing his engines to maximum as he dove toward the enemy formation. "New Haven, this is Defiant," he transmitted as enemy fire began bracketing his position. "Tell my family I—" His words were cut off as his ship vanished in a ball of plasma. In the command center, Morrison watched his defenders die and felt something cold settle in his chest. The colony's final automated defenses were failing one by one. Soon the Nexari would be in position to begin their assault on the colony itself. "Sir," Torres called out, her voice tight with emotion, "I'm reading massive energy signatures on long-range sensors." Morrison frowned. "More Nexari ships?" "No, sir. The signature is different, and it's coming from the opposite direction." On the tactical display, a new contact appeared at the edge of sensor range. It was large, larger even than the biggest Nexari vessel, but its energy signature was unlike anything in their databases. "Can you identify the vessel?" Morrison asked. Torres worked frantically at her console. "Negative, sir, but I'm picking up a transmission. It's in English." Morrison felt his heart skip a beat. "Put it through." The speakers crackled with static, and then a voice emerged. Human, but carrying an accent Morrison couldn't place. The words were calm, almost conversational, but somehow they carried the weight of distant thunder. "New Haven Colony, this is Captain James Harrison of the Earth vessel Retribution. We received your distress call. Recommend all civilian personnel remain in shelters. We're about to make some noise." Morrison stared at the display in disbelief. According to the sensors, the approaching ship was still 3 hours away at maximum speed. How could they hope to arrive in time? The Nexari commander apparently had the same question. Another transmission came through from the alien fleet. "Unknown human vessel. You cannot reach the colony before we complete our harvesting. Turn away or share their fate." The response came immediately, still in that calm, measured tone. Nexari Fleet, this is Captain Harrison. You have entered Earth-claimed space and threatened Earth civilians. You have 10 seconds to withdraw, or we will consider you hostile. Choose wisely. Through the viewport, Morrison saw the Nexari ships shift formation, turning some of their weapons toward the distant contact. The alien commander's voice crackled over the comm again. Your ship is alone. Our fleet numbers 15 vessels. Your threats are empty. There was a pause, and when the human voice returned, Morrison could hear something new in it, something that made his blood run cold despite the words offering salvation. Nexari Fleet, this is your final warning. My ship is the Earth Defense Force Heavy Battleship Retribution. We are the vessel that broke the siege of Proxima Station. We are the ship that ended the Kralix invasion at Beta Centauri. We have never retreated from a fight, and we have never left human civilians undefended. You now have 5 seconds to withdraw. Morrison looked at Torres, seeing his own confusion reflected in her eyes. They had never heard of any ship called Retribution. The siege of Proxima Station was a classified military action, and Beta Centauri was simply listed as a resolved territorial dispute in the public records. The countdown reached 0. What happened next defied everything Morrison thought he knew about space combat. The distant contact on their sensors suddenly accelerated beyond anything he had ever seen. The energy signature spiked so high that their instruments briefly overloaded. Through the viewport, he saw something impossible. A ship materialized out of hyperspace barely 1,000 kilometers from the Nexari fleet. It was massive, easily twice the size of their largest vessel, but that wasn't what made Morrison's breath catch in his throat. The ship was black. Not the painted black of the Nexari vessels, but a black that seemed to absorb light itself. Its hull was sleek and predatory, covered in weapon ports that glowed with barely contained energy. Along its sides, in letters that burned like fire, were the words, ED's Retribution. But it was the ship's arrival that truly defied belief. It hadn't simply dropped out of hyperspace. It had appeared exactly where it needed to be, moving at precisely the right speed and vector to engage the enemy immediately. The level of precision required was impossible, like threading a needle while blindfolded and riding a hurricane. The Nexari fleet reacted with the swift coordination of experienced warriors, turning their weapons toward this new threat. Crimson energy beams lanced out toward the human ship, each one carrying enough power to vaporize a city block. The beams struck the Retribution's shields and simply stopped. The energy dissipated harmlessly across a barrier that flickered with patterns of blue and silver light. Captain Harrison's voice echoed across space once more, still calm but carrying an undertone of barely leashed violence. New Haven Colony, recommend you dim your external lights and cover all viewports. About to engage hostile forces. This may get bright. Morrison didn't hesitate. All stations, implement blackout protocols. Seal all viewports. Do it now. Emergency shutters slammed down across the colony's observation windows. The external lights died, plunging New Haven into darkness, save for the minimal navigation beacons. Through the command center's armored viewport, Morrison watched as the impossible ship began its attack. The Retribution's weapons opened fire, and Morrison understood why they had been warned to look away. Beams of coherent energy, brighter than welding torches, reached out across space. But these weren't the crude plasma bolts of human design, or even the sophisticated energy weapons of the Nexari. These were something else entirely. Where they struck Nexari shields, the barriers didn't just fail, they collapsed catastrophically, taking entire sections of ship hull with them. The beams seemed to unravel matter at the molecular level, leaving wounds in the alien vessels that glowed white-hot around the edges. The first Nexari ship died in seconds, its hull breached in a dozen places as atmosphere and debris vented into space. The second tried to flee, only to discover that the human vessel was faster than anything they had ever encountered. Morrison watched in stunned silence as the Retribution pursued the fleeing ship, its weapons firing with mechanical precision. Each shot found its target. Each target died. And through it all, the mysterious human vessel moved like a thing alive, dancing between return fire with impossible grace. "Sir," Torres whispered, her voice filled with awe and terror. "They're targeting systems. They're not missing, not even once." She was right. In all the chaos of battle, with ships moving at tremendous speeds and firing while maneuvering, the Retribution had not missed a single shot. Every beam found its target, every target was destroyed, and the terrible black ship moved through the Nexari formation like death itself. Within 10 minutes, it was over. 15 Nexari warships, each one a technological marvel capable of destroying planets, had been reduced to drifting wreckage and expanding clouds of debris. The Retribution floated motionless among the ruins of the enemy fleet, its hull unmarked and its shields steady. Captain Harrison's voice came through the comm once more, and Morrison was shocked to HFY. They thought no help would come. Story, Part 3. 3 months had passed since the Retribution's arrival at New Haven, and Commander Morrison was beginning to understand that his quiet mining colony would never be the same. The monitoring station that Captain Harrison had requested turned out to be far more sophisticated than advertised. What had been described as a small observation post was actually a network of sensor arrays, communication relays, and defensive platforms that turned New Haven into one of the most secure locations in human space. The 20 specialists who came to run the station were unlike any military personnel Morrison had ever encountered. They moved through the colony like ghosts, polite and professional, but somehow separate from the normal flow of life. They knew things about technology and warfare that weren't in any manual Morrison had access to, and they occasionally made casual references to events that didn't appear in any historical records. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos was typical of the group. She had arrived as part of the communications team, but Morrison had quickly discovered that she could repair systems the colony's engineers couldn't even understand, predict equipment failures days before they happened, and speak at least 6 alien languages fluently. When he asked about her background, she simply said she had experience with various non-human contact protocols. The most unsettling changes were the ones he couldn't see. Ships began appearing in the system's outer reaches, detected only by the new sensor arrays. They never approached the colony directly, but they watched from the darkness between asteroids and vanished whenever conventional patrols were dispatched to investigate. "Nexari scouts," explained Lieutenant Commander Park, the station's intelligence officer, during one of their regular briefings. "They're trying to understand what happened to their attack fleet." Morrison studied the tactical display, showing the locations where the mysterious ships had been detected. "How many different vessels are we talking about?" "At least 12 distinct signatures over the past month. They're being careful not to establish patterns, but our sensors are more sophisticated than they realize." "Are they a threat to the colony?" Park considered the question. "Not directly. They're intelligence-gathering missions, not attack formations, but their presence confirms what Captain Harrison suspected." "Which is?" "The Nexari are reconsidering their assessment of human defensive capabilities. The complete disappearance of 15 warships has gotten their attention at the highest levels of their command structure." Morrison had been dreading this conversation, but he had to ask. "Are we expecting retaliation?" "Unknown. The Nexari don't typically escalate conflicts unless they're confident of victory. Right now, they don't understand what they're facing." That was the heart of it, Morrison realized. The Nexari weren't just confused by advanced human weapons or tactics. They were baffled by something that defied their understanding of physics itself. Ships that could appear anywhere in space, weapons that eliminated matter completely, technology that seemed closer to magic than engineering. His contemplation was interrupted by an emergency alert from the colony's communications center. Commander Morrison to communications immediately. Priority Alpha transmission incoming. Morrison hurried through the corridors, noting that several of the monitoring station personnel were already moving toward their posts with purposeful urgency. Whatever was happening, they had detected it before the colony's own systems. In the communications center, he found Lieutenant Torres working frantically at her console, while Staff Sergeant Santos stood behind her, making adjustments to equipment that hadn't been there the week before. "Report," Morrison ordered. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from deep space. It's unusual." Santos looked up from her work. "Commander, the signal is coming from approximately 40 light-years away, but it's arriving in real time. That's not possible with conventional communication technology." Morrison felt a familiar chill. "Put it through." The speakers crackled, and then a voice emerged. Human, but distorted by interference and distance. More disturbing was the unmistakable sound of weapons fire and explosions in the background. "This is Captain Elizabeth Harper of the agricultural colony Demeter's Garden. We are under attack by Nexari forces. Repeat, we are under attack. They appeared without warning with a fleet of 30 vessels. Our defenses have been overwhelmed, requesting immediate assistance from any Earth ships in range." The transmission cut to static, then resumed with Harper's voice noticeably more strained. "Colony population is 11,000 civilians, mostly families with children. The Nexari have begun bombardment of our defensive installations. We have maybe an hour before they breach our shields." Morrison grabbed a communicator. "Get me Captain Harrison immediately." "Sir," Santos said quietly, "Captain Harrison departed 3 days ago. The Retribution is currently investigating Nexari activity in the Outer Rim sectors." Morrison's heart sank. Demeter's Garden was 40 light-years away. Even with the fastest human ships, it would take weeks to reach them. But the colonists didn't have weeks. They had an hour. "Can we contact the Retribution?" he asked. "We can try, but they're operating under communication silence. Even if we reach them, they can't possibly arrive in time to help." Morrison stared at the communication console, listening to the desperate pleas from a colony that was about to die. 11,000 people, mostly families with children, facing slavery or death while the nearest help was weeks away. Then Santos did something unexpected. She activated a different communication system, one that Morrison didn't recognize. Instead of speaking into the microphone, she began entering commands on a keyboard that glowed with soft blue light. "Sergeant, what are you doing?" "Something that's going to require a significant report to my superiors," she said without looking up. "But I can't listen to those people die when there might be something we can do about it." The system she was operating hummed to life, and displays showed energy patterns that made no sense to Morrison. Whatever Santos was doing, it involved technology that was clearly beyond standard Earth Defense Force equipment. "Sergeant Santos to any ships operating under Special Operations Directive 7, she said into a different microphone. "We have a code black situation at Demeter's Garden Colony. 30-plus Nexari vessels, civilian population at risk. Request immediate assistance." The response came within seconds, but it didn't arrive through normal communication channels. Instead, it seemed to materialize directly in the air above the communication console as a three-dimensional hologram of a woman in a captain's uniform Morrison didn't recognize. "This is Captain Alexandra Petrov of the EDS Nemesis. We've received your transmission. Current position is 78 light-years from Demeter's Garden. Initiating emergency response protocol." Morrison stared at the hologram in amazement. "Captain, there's no way you can reach them in time. It would take—" "Commander Morrison," Captain Petrov interrupted, somehow aware that he was present despite him not being part of the original transmission. "You've been working with Captain Harrison's team for several months. Haven't you wondered how the Retribution appeared at New Haven with such perfect timing?" The question hit Morrison like a physical blow. He had wondered, of course, but had pushed the implications aside because they didn't make sense. No ship could travel that far that fast with that level of precision. How? He asked simply. Captain Petrov's holographic image smiled grimly. There are aspects of human technology that remain classified for very good reasons, Commander. What I can tell you is that distance and time are more flexible concepts than most people realize. The hologram flickered and stabilized. Sergeant Santos, thank you for the alert. We'll handle the situation from here. Recommend you maintain communication with Demeter's Garden to coordinate civilian evacuation if necessary. Understood, Captain. Good hunting. The hologram vanished, leaving Morrison alone with Santos and Torres. In the sudden silence, he could hear his own heartbeat. Sergeant, he said carefully, what just happened? Santos was shutting down the mysterious communication system, her movements precise and economical. I contacted a ship that was in position to respond to the emergency at Demeter's Garden. Sir. A ship that's 78 light-years away. Yes, sir. Morrison rubbed his temples, feeling a headache building. And this ship can somehow cover that distance quickly enough to help? That's classified, sir. But I suggest you maintain contact with Demeter's Garden. If Captain Petrov says she'll handle the situation, she'll handle it. For the next hour, Morrison listened to increasingly desperate transmissions from the besieged colony. Captain Harper's reports painted a picture of overwhelming force and systematic destruction as the Nexari fleet methodically eliminated Demeter's Garden's defenses. Our outer shields are down, Harper reported during one transmission. They're beginning to target civilian sectors. I'm ordering evacuation of non-essential personnel to the emergency shelters, but there's nowhere to run. Morrison found himself pacing the communications center, feeling helpless as he listened to another human colony facing destruction. Whatever Captain Petrov had planned, she was cutting it very close. Then, exactly 58 minutes after the first distress call, everything changed. This is Captain Harper. I'm reading massive energy signatures on long-range sensors. Unknown vessel approaching at... That can't be right. Torres, check our sensors. There was a pause, filled with the sound of rapid conversation in the background. Confirmed. Single vessel approaching from galactic north. Size, dear God, it's enormous. Energy output is off our scale. Morrison held his breath, remembering his first glimpse of the retribution emerging from hyperspace like an avenging angel. This is Captain Alexandra Petrov of the Earth Defense Force vessel Nemesis. Demeter's Garden Colony, please clear all civilian vessels from the combat area. We're about to engage hostile forces. Captain Petrov, this is Harper. How did you get here so fast? Our distress call went out less than an hour ago. Trade secrets, Captain Harper. Now please stand clear. This won't take long. What followed was a one-sided massacre that made the battle at New Haven look like a minor skirmish. Through the audio transmissions from Demeter's Garden, Morrison could hear the excitement and awe in Captain Harper's voice as she described weapons that rewrote the laws of physics and tactics that defied conventional understanding. The Nexari fleet is... They're just gone, Harper reported, her voice filled with disbelief. 30 warships destroyed in less than 5 minutes. I've never seen anything like it. The Nemesis is unlike any ship in our databases. Morrison caught Santos's eye. How many ships like the Nemesis are out there, Sergeant? Santos was quiet for a long moment. Enough, sir, however many it takes. Over the following weeks, Morrison began to piece together a picture that both thrilled and terrified him. Earth's outer colonies weren't just protected by a few advanced ships operating in secret. They were guarded by an entire shadow fleet of vessels that represented technology so far beyond current human capabilities that they might as well have been alien. The monitoring station at New Haven served as a window into this hidden war. Reports came in regularly of Nexari fleets vanishing without trace, of slave convoys being liberated by ships that appeared from nowhere, of human colonies being defended by guardians their populations never saw. But perhaps the most revealing incident came when Morrison finally worked up the courage to ask Lieutenant Commander Park a direct question. "How long has this been going on? This shadow war?" Park looked at him with something that might have been sympathy. "Commander, what year do you think it is?" The question was so unexpected that Morrison almost laughed. "What do you mean? It's 23I-87. According to whose calendar?" Morrison felt reality shift around him like quicksand. "What are you saying?" "Time and space aren't as fixed as most people believe, Commander. When you have technology that can manipulate both, concepts like when and where become much more fluid." "Are you telling me that your ships can travel through time?" Park was quiet for a long moment. "I'm telling you that the universe is vast and strange, and that humanity has learned to navigate it in ways that would seem impossible to earlier generations. The specifics are classified." Morrison thought about Captain Harrison's calm certainty when he said they had been tracking Nexari activity. He thought about Captain Petrov appearing at Demeter's garden with impossible speed. He thought about weapons that eliminated matter completely and ships that could materialize anywhere in space. "How far in the future are you from?" he asked. "That's not the right question, Commander. We're not from the future. We're from a present that most of humanity isn't ready to know about yet." "And what happens when they are ready?" Park smiled sadly. "Then the secrets stop being necessary, and humanity can take its place as what it was always meant to become." Morrison looked out the viewport at the space where the Retribution had first appeared, saving his colony from destruction. In the distance, he could see the barely visible glow of the monitoring station's sensors, keeping watch for threats that might emerge from the darkness between stars. And until then? Until then, people like Captain Harrison and Captain Petrov and their crews stand guard in the shadows. They protect humanity's children until those children are old enough to protect themselves. Morrison nodded slowly, beginning to understand his place in the larger story. New Haven wasn't just a mining colony anymore. It was a beacon in the darkness, a proof that humanity's reach extended far beyond what most people knew, protected by guardians who operated beyond the boundaries of space and time itself. In the months that followed, life at New Haven settled into a new normal. The colonists went about their daily business, mining asteroids and raising families, mostly unaware that their quiet settlement had become a critical node in a war spanning light years and decades. But sometimes, late at night, Morrison would stand at his office window and look out at the stars. And occasionally, just at the edge of perception, he would see shadows moving among the asteroids. Ships that existed but didn't exist, guardians who watched but were never seen. And he would smile, knowing that somewhere in the vast darkness of space, Captain Harrison and his crew were still keeping watch, still standing guard over humanity's far-flung children. The Nexari had thought no help would come. They had been catastrophically wrong. Earth's most dangerous ships had arrived, and they would never stop protecting their people, no matter how far they had to travel through space or time to do it. Ere that it carried no trace of triumph or satisfaction. If anything, the man sounded tired. "New Haven Colony, this is Captain Harrison. Hostile forces have been neutralized. All clear to resume normal operations. Request permission to dock for medical assistance and supply transfer?" Morrison found his voice with difficulty. "Permission granted, Captain, and thank you. You saved 12,000 lives today. Just doing our job, Commander. Retribution out." As the massive warship moved toward the colony's docking facilities, Morrison couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. Earth had sent them a guardian angel, but it was an angel with teeth and claws and weapons that turned matter to energy with casual ease. Who was Captain James Harrison? Where had his ship come from? And why did Morrison get the feeling that the Retribution's arrival at New Haven was far from coincidental? The answers, he suspected, would be more terrifying than the questions.